So an experiential learning requirement that it could either be fulfilled with an internship or a study abroad experience. It is a graduation requirement. And if students choose to use an internship to satisfy that requirement, they would need to fill out the internship learning agreement. And then after that, fill out an internship evaluation. So what is an internship? What's the definition that we're using? So it has to have learning goals. So that means that it has to have defined expectations, right? So a full job description. It has to provide you with orientation and training. So if orientation is not available, there has to be some sort of meeting at first, at the start of the internship, where they're kind of giving you an overview of what that internship involves and what the expectations are, right? And then it also has to involve supervision and mentoring. So you need to have a supervisor, that's obvious, but that person has to be an active supervisor. So we do ask questions in our internship learning agreement to make sure that that person is providing ongoing supervision and mentoring. And then, of course, as I mentioned before, there has to be an evaluation at the end. And then for hours and compensation, it has to be a minimum of 100 hours. So if you're saying that, if you're submitting an internship for, let's say, for example, this semester, the fall of 2020, if the start date and end dates that you provide don't equal to 100 hours, unfortunately, it will get rejected because it just doesn't meet our minimum requirements. There have been cases where students say, hey, I'm just doing 8 hours a week. My internship is going to go from fall of 2020 to spring of 2021. That's perfectly fine as well. As I mentioned before, the start date and end date have to reflect those 100 hours. And it really doesn't matter what semester you put in there. You can put fall 2020 or you could put spring 2021. But what matters the most is really that start and end date, and that it equals to at least 100 hours. And I emphasize that because it has happened where students are doing like 54 hours, and then I have to be the bearer of bad news to email them and let them know that it does not meet our requirements. So students can use internships that are paid. So if you, I know there's been a little bit of a confusion. Students often think that it has to be an unpaid internship. That's not true. Sure. Students can use a paid internship or any kind of internship that they're receiving academic credit for. So in a way, you can double dip in that sense. It doesn't really matter as long as it meets our internship definition. All right, so then what kind of activities are included, right? So a research assistantship is fine. Art apprenticeships are okay. Political campaigning, so if you're working for, someone who's running for presidential nomination, if you are on their campaign, that can be submitted. However, CUNY cannot be involved in it. So if this was a recommendation from an advisor or for myself, then it wouldn't count. And that's in terms of liability. We cannot be unbiased in something. If we were supporting or if we were recommending, right, and saying, oh, you should go, work for a presidential campaign of, whatever candidate was up, then that would mean that we're kind of biased in that, and we have to remain unbiased in it. I hope that makes sense. You're also allowed to do it with religious organizations and family-owned businesses. However, with family-owned businesses, your supervisor cannot be a family member, I think for obvious reasons, but because then there is bias there as well. So it has to be a non-family member that is supervising you if you decide to participate in that. All right, a couple of things to note. So we did not allow remote or virtual internships in the past, but we've changed that, obviously because of the pandemic. Lastly, there have been a couple of submissions for student-run organizations, charters, or like student club activities. That does not count as an internship. So if it's, as someone said to me, it's for students, made for students. Unfortunately, if there is not a full-time person that works for a legitimate company with a legitimate company email address, then it's most likely not going to go through. Unless it's a health, like a clinic, in those cases, we have to verify that that is the company website, because I've seen a couple of health sites that will be like, medmd@gmail.com. So then the internship learning agreement, It is a form. Right now it's electronic on Career Path. Like I said, I will give you this slide so that you have all the links that are on here. We do have an Internship Learning Agreement handbook to give you the details to what I'm going to go over. So I try to condense it as much as possible, but you'll need to go onto this link at the very bottom to make sure that you get all the details for everything. Please make sure to notify your supervisor in advance. You don't want it to come to a situation where you tell them, oh, I have this form, and then they say, oh, the student did not tell me that this was a requirement. So from the start, when you acquire that internship, please have a conversation with your supervisor in whatever form that takes place. But let them know that you're hoping to use this internship to satisfy a graduation requirement. If they haven't brought that up before. If they ask you at some point as you're applying for that internship or interviewing for it, or when they offer it to you, and they ask you, are you trying to get credit for it? Your answer should be yes. Although you're not trying to get academic credit for it, you are asking for it to be put towards the graduation credit, right? So make sure at the very beginning, when you're talking to your supervisor, if they ask about academic credit, that you say, not necessarily academic credit, but I am trying to use this internship to satisfy a requirement, a graduation requirement. Or if later on, you started at the internship, I know this is sometimes a little, intimidating, let your supervisor know, I was hoping to have this internship satisfy a graduation requirement. Would you be willing to sign an agreement form that pretty much just outlines what my work is going to be here, the start and end dates, how many hours I'm completing, and kind of what my learning outcomes are for it. I will now click into the handbook just to show you really quick. So on the Macaulay website, when you go into internships, it's right here on the right-hand side. Right, so this is our Internship Learning Agreement handbook, and it does give you, right, as soon as you click that, kind of a step-by-step run, and we have screenshots in there also to kind of guide you through how to do that. And here are all the details that I was talking about before. It's much more extensive than my slides. So you'll see as soon as you log on, it tells you to click forms and evaluations, add new, etc. So I would really highly recommend taking a look at the handbook when you have time. So for Career Path, username is usually your Macaulay email address, and then your password is your date of birth in the following format. So 4 digits for the year, 2 digits for the month, and 2 digits for the day. So once you log into Career Path, like I said, if you go onto the internships page, it's right here where it says log into Career Path, so you don't have to remember the URL. But once you log in, it'll look like this, right? And then as the screenshot mentioned, I'm just trying to look for my shortcuts. I'm going into forms and evaluations. And then once I'm there, I'm going to click add new, and then that opens up the form. As you can see, I already filled one out here, right? I was a career development intern at Macaulay in fall of 2019. It'll give you a chance to review it, right? On the right-hand side, it will let you know the status of it. And then as soon as you submit it, it will give you the option for the student evaluation. This should be done at the end of the semester that you're interning. So again, if it was a fall 2020 semester, then you're gonna do it at the end of the fall 2020 semester. So then it'll give you the option to choose what type it is, internship or research. And that opens up the rest of the form. Make sure to read the instructions. For Baruch in particular, I am the first step. So although you should schedule an appointment with your advisor to review the form to make sure that it has the best chances of being approved, it then goes directly to me. I then review it. And if I approve it, then it automatically sends an email to your supervisor. So again, make sure to notify your supervisor before submitting this, because then they'll get an automatic email instantly after your advisor or myself approves it. So give them a heads up, let them know to keep their eye on their inbox, whatever email that you submitted for it. All right, so then very quickly, it gives you a lot of different prompts for it, right? You have to submit learning goals, you have to let us know what company it is, I know a lot of students get confused about the very top. So there are 2 areas for you to put a semester in. These are our active semesters in the system at the moment. So this is what triggers the system to send you a reminder if you have not completed the evaluation. However, we have had some instances where students want to submit one that is a little bit older. So we're still allowing folks to do that. However, we really want to encourage everyone to do an active semester because it just minimizes the chances of it being rejected. And then you could make whatever accommodations you need if that internship doesn't pass. But here is, where you could put fall 2019 if you wanted to, and I hope that makes sense. One last thing that I mentioned before in passing is this email address. Please try to make sure to include the supervisor's company email address in this area. It just makes me less suspicious when I get it. However, if it's a Gmail, then I do more digging in and I look into, whether or not that is an actual legitimate company, even though I'm doing that already, but it's just a red flag for me. So please try your best to include a company email address. And there are the start and end dates, the hours, etc. Is this remote? Yes or no. This is everything here that is starred with a red little asterisk is required. So please make sure to try to fill this out as much as possible and follow the prompts. And then you just click submit. Like I said with the last one, then once you click submit, it'll give you the automatic option of that student evaluation. Don't fill it out at the beginning of the semester. Make sure you fill it out at the end. Okay. You also have the options to track your hours in here. If that's of interest, it's not required, but it's up to you if you want to do that. All right. Make sure that you remember, once you're ready to submit your internship requirement, the internship portion of the requirement, Macaulay Honors College internships page, right? And then on the right-hand side here, we have the Internship Learning Agreement Handbook for you, and that's a step-by-step. And then